Yeah.
That's
Hopefully he doesn't bark.
that's okay. Dogs barking, I feel like most people would chuckle about that.
Okay, so I see it's 5 now, and we are live on YouTube, so we're ready to go. Welcome to Family Law Now After Hours. Today's topic is what should I bring to my initial divorce consultation? Your first consultation with a divorce lawyer sets the foundation for your entire family law journey. Arriving prepared not only saves time and money, it helps you feel more in control during the emotional, challenging chapter. Knowing what documents to gather, what questions to ask, and what information your lawyer truly needs can make your initial meeting more productive and less stressful. Please use the Q&A feature to submit your general comments and questions about this topic. For specific questions about the details of your family law matter, please contact our team directly. The purpose of this series is to discuss general information on separation, divorce, and family law matters. Any information provided here should not be construed as legal advice. Stay tuned until the end, as we will be sharing how you can schedule a free initial consultation with one of our lawyers. Now, I'll introduce our panelists for this evening. Thank you, Margie and Michelle, for being here with me and having this conversation tonight. Margie has over 17 years of experience in family law and has been a lawyer since 2002. She is a collaborative family law practitioner and an accredited mediator who is passionate about facilitating fair and reasonable settlements for her clients. Margie appreciates law in a holistic manner and believes that, as a family lawyer, she has a unique opportunity to provide emotionally intelligent advice to clients that will assist them in moving forward with their lives in a better position and in their best interest and their children in mind. Michelle is a senior managing lawyer at Russell Alexander Collaborative Family Lawyers. She's been practicing family law for over 14 years, specializing in divorce, custody, access, property division, child and spousal support, and family responsibility office enforcement matters. Her focus is on creating comprehensive, creative resolutions to family law matters. Michelle excels at helping clients deal with complex financial issues that arise as a result of a separation. I'm also one of the panelists this evening. My name is Anna. I am a compassionate, strategic family law lawyer who takes a client-centered approach in every matter. I help clients feel supported and empowered while navigating the emotional realities of family law. With strong communication skills and a collaborative mindset, I develop practical, tailored resolutions that reflect my clients' goals. I've been recognized for offering clear, creative guidance in moments of uncertainty, enabling clients to make confident, informed decisions. I hold a Master of Laws from the University of Law in London and a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Sussex, grounding my practice in both advocacy and empathy. So, with that, what should you bring to your initial consultation? I think this topic is great because the fact that we have so many people tuning in this evening shows that many people want to come to the process prepared. In my mind, I kind of compare it to, researching the menu before you go to a restaurant, right? The initial consultation is just that. It's your first step. So coming prepared ensures that you're making better use of your time and of your money. So, with that, Margie, can you tell us what are some of those essential documents to prepare ahead of time and bring to that initial consultation?
Thanks, Anna. Just to sort of piggyback on what you said, and an initial consultation with your lawyer is primarily about information gathering and giving you a clear direction and hopefully a plan for your immediate next steps as you move forward with your separation. So, bearing in mind the primary purpose of this initial consultation is to provide you with general advice, general information, not legal advice. Okay, so that's very important to remember. And so while it's helpful to uh, have all of your documents ready prior to the initial consultation, and we're going to get into more details about what those documents should be. Just don't worry about it, prior to your initial consultation. Don't, fear that you have to have everything available to the lawyer for the initial consultation. It's helpful, but it's not necessary. And that's because most initial consultations are an hour long or sometimes shorter than an hour. And so the lawyer for the consultation will likely not have time to review all of the documents, or necessarily provide legal advice with respect to those documents during the consultation. And I want to, especially highlight that, especially for draft separation agreements, we do not provide independent legal advice at an initial consultation. I find that sometimes there's an initial consultation, there's a draft separation agreement, and the expectation is that we would provide independent legal advice on that. Unfortunately, we cannot do that in initial consultation because, again, it's for general information and not specifically to give you legal advice. But having said that, it's helpful to have the following documents gathered and available for the lawyer at your initial consultation. So first of all, when you're booking the initial consultation, you'll need a government issued photo ID. You're going to go through an intake process. And in that intake process, you should have the full legal names of both parties, their dates of birth, current addresses, and contact information. And the primary purpose of that is to do a conflict search. And to ensure that the other party hasn't already contacted our firm, right? Or that we're able to assist you should you decide to retain the firm. After you book the initial consultation, you'll be asked to complete an intake form or a questionnaire. I cannot emphasize this enough. Please, 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 I beg you, please complete the form and the questionnaire fully. Do not omit any information requested. And that includes the full legal names of your children, any children of the relationship, dates of birth of both the children, any children of the relationship. Because anything that the form asks you to provide, any information, please provide it, because that it'll help the lawyer understand your situation quickly and more accurately, and it will allow you to make the most of your initial consultation. For initial consultation, the documents that you should have is that if your matter is in court, any court documents. If you've been served with a court application, if you've been served with motion materials, notices of motion, it's very important that the lawyer at the initial consultation is made aware of any impending court dates and the status of your matter if your matter is in litigation. If you have any fully executed or signed domestic contracts, again, not a draft, but one that has already been signed. Domestic contract includes any marriage contracts or, as lay people call it, prenups, parenting plans, a separation agreement, anything that has already been signed. Please have that available for the lawyer to sort of have a general idea of what your situation is, and give you sort of information as to the next steps. And lastly, any correspondence from opposing counsel, if there's a lawyer on the other side, would be most helpful. So we could also understand, if there's a threat of litigation, if they requested anything, sort of the status of your matter in the eyes of the opposing lawyer. So you don't need every document perfectly organized. Missing documents can be gathered later. So don't worry about, again, having perfectly curated documents for your lawyer initial consultation. We could also let you know, once you retain, especially what documents we'll need from you to move your matter forward. The lawyer can explain what's required after the first meeting. And so providing the lawyer with the essential documents and information from the initial consultation, which includes the questionnaire or intake form, as well as these documents that I've just listed, that will help the lawyer understand your situation quickly and accurately. As I said, it saves the time and ensures that you get the most out of your consultation, and it reduces any stress that you might have by ensuring that nothing important is forgotten. So bearing that in mind, I think our next discussion is what documents might be important especially once they're retained.
Thanks so much, Margie. That was a great synopsis. I really appreciated that. And I fully agree with you. The more prepared you are, the better, because you never know what information will be important or valuable to your lawyer at the initial consultation. Now, again, we are talking about financial disclosures. So, as Margie said, don't expect to have all of these things perfectly curated and ready to go at the initial consultation. But again, the more you have, if a lawyer asks you a question and you don't know the answer, you can then pull out those documents and double check it. So, the most important one that I think everyone should always have is your most recent income tax returns. And that's because things like your income is going to affect lots of different issues. And many times people have a rough idea, but having that income tax return makes it just easier in case you need to know a more direct number. You'd have a easier time of being able to get it. Your current income may also be important because let's say you changed jobs, or maybe you had a medical emergency, or you had some time off work. That may be reflected in your current pay stub. I mean, today being January 6th, your current pay stub probably won't be that much different. But let's say we're in August and you have been off work for 5 months. It wouldn't be fair to calculate your income on what you should have worked for the full 12 months. So having that information is helpful. And your lawyer, once you retain them, will definitely need to have it. If you have a business, having the business financial information is always helpful. Again, at an initial consultation, you're probably not going to need it, but it's one of those things that the earlier you start getting organized, the easier it is to get some of these things. I don't know about you guys, but recently I had to renew my life insurance and they asked me for my business information number. I think I took a month to find it because I just didn't know where to start. So starting early is always a great way to start things. And then you can also talk to the consultation lawyer, and if they have an answer, they let you know if you need it. And if they don't, what they'll tell you is wait until you meet with your retained lawyer. That lawyer is going to be the person who can answer those more detailed questions. Okay, and the great thing with the intake lawyer is they'll sometimes make notes like, hey, client needs some information about X. So before you even meet with your retained lawyer, you can look at that, that lawyer can look at the notes and be prepared for what the client is going to ask. Some other things, and again, this does not relate to everybody, but if you have it, let's say you've got other sources of income, or you've got, some interesting real estate issues, you've got pension documents. These are the time to start bringing these things together and having them ready. So that way, when you do start having the proper consultation with your lawyer, you're out the gate running. You already have a lot of the stuff. And believe me, when I find clients who come to me and they're like, yep, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, it's ready to go. Not only does it save them time, but it saves them money as well because it shows that they're ready, they're prepared. And, I usually do a homework list. And if the client already has half the things on the homework list, it just makes it a lot easier to get going. If there is any significant assets of personal property, so not, houses, but let's say I've got a client who has a really expensive train collection. That may be something you may want to talk about or you may have questions about. And you want to start getting that information together. Or maybe the other side has an expensive train collection and you want to know, hey, is that going to be included in the equalization? That's something that you may want to get some information about. Are we talking about $100 of Lego here? Or are we talking about something that's actually worth a lot of money? Those are the kinds of things that your initial consultation lawyer can give you some high level advice about. So that is really the documents that, I would put together if I were coming into my initial consultation and also as I'm planning to meet my lawyer. But how do you actually do that? How do you actually start to gather that information? I'm sure as you're listening to me talk, you're saying, oh my God, that's a lot. Like that's a lot of things that Michelle wants me to get. And I always say, start with what you can get right now, right? If you've got 20 things, start with the easiest. It's almost like a snowball. The more you get done, the easier it is. And also, maybe you don't have all 20 things, but if you have 15 or 18, that will probably give your lawyer a really good start to go with. And maybe after seeing those first 15 or 18, your lawyer will say, actually, you know what? I don't need that 20th thing anymore because the information you've given me has actually included some of that information, or it's not an issue. $100 Lego, we do not need to get that granular in this. I, as a lawyer, always like to give my clients homework. So I appreciate it when my clients respond back to me and they have a master list of the homework and it's all numbered. So number one, I've asked you to get your income tax returns and you actually label them number one, income tax returns for the past 3 years. The organizational part of Michelle gets so giddy when she sees clients who are super organized like that and then follow that because it also that's how the courts want us to do it as well. The courts don't want to be wading through information. They want it all organized and easy to access. The more you do, the more you save. I tell that to clients all the time. So if you give me financial statements, sorry, bank statements, and you in one PDF give me 3 different bank accounts and mix up all the dates and they're all out of order. It's going to take our staff time to organize and to, put them into the correct bundles. Whereas if you say, this is my CIBC bank account for date of marriage, it's simple. We don't have to do anything else. We can just plop those numbers in. Um, so the next thing, use your online portals and accounts. Most big banks, you can go online and get bank statements going back numbers of years. So if you're looking for something, chances are, if you go online, you can get it done. If you don't have your online banking passwords, that's fine. Go to the bank branch, get take your card, take your PIN, find somebody really nice and say, look, I am so sorry, but I need to get access to this. How do I do it? Sometimes there is even an online system or a phone number that you could call that can let you do it all from the comfort of your home. The CRA also has a lot of tax information, and you can pull those things directly from the CRA, often using your banking information. So having all this stuff, as you can see, snowballs. Once you get your banking information, then you can log into the CRA. Once you get your CRA, you've got your tax information. These are all things that you can kind of easily do to get you started. I would also say that it's very helpful if you are very clear. I think a lot of clients get confused and they give me information about the other person's banking or the other person's tax returns. So if you have questions, go back to your lawyer or maybe their clerk and get clarification. I don't want you spending 5 hours trying to find the other party's banking information because that's not what I need, right? I don't want you wasting your time and your poor energy doing that. So sometimes a 2-minute email can save you hours of work. If there is joint property, I do want to know that, right? I do want to know if you own a house, although it's not solely in your name, it's jointly in your name. I do want information about that. But I find often that people will confuse, okay, if the other person has a business, do I then need to go find all their CRA documents or all their banking information? Absolutely not. That's their responsibility, right? It could be an invasion of privacy if you have documents that you should not have access to. So, get that clarification, make sure you're fully understanding with your lawyer or your law clerk exactly what it is that you need to get before you waste a lot of time and energy. Hidden assets or hidden debts. These are the silly little things that I don't know about you guys, Margie and Anna, but I'm joint on my parents' bank accounts. They're old school. They just like having me there. I have never looked at those bank accounts. They're not mine. But you can imagine that if you were the other party and you're like, wait a second, I know Michelle has a CABC bank account, but she hasn't listed it on her documents. She's not provided it anywhere. It may be a red flag. So let your lawyer know if something like that happens, so that they can give you advice. Maybe it needs to be provided. Maybe you can say it's in trust for, my mom. Another thing that people have all the time are RESPs for their kids. Really, you're holding it in trust for your children. So let your lawyer know and let your lawyer teach you how to fully disclose that. So it doesn't seem like you're hiding something from the court. You're being open and transparent. You're just saying, hey, this isn't really an asset that's mine. It's for the children. Preserve documents early. So people tend to get flustered, and they kind of duck their heads in the sand. I call it the ostrich, where there's just too much going on. Uh, Start little, start small. As you see something, let's say it's your bank account statement comes in and you're still getting mail, put it in one spot and have it all together. And then when you may not have time to upload it and send it to your lawyer right that moment, but then when you do have time, let's say it's the weekend, you can sit down and scan and save and properly name 4 or 5 things at once instead of trying to do it in the middle of your workday or things like that. And lastly, disclosure's ongoing. So don't worry. I'm going to give you a homework list as your lawyer. And let's say I'm your initial consultation and I say, hey, this is the homework I need you to get. When you meet with your lawyer, you're going to need more stuff and they're going to identify some more things that you need. And then maybe a couple of months will go by and a conversation will happen and your lawyer will say, oh, I didn't know you had a joint account with your mom. Yes, please send me that information. So knowing what you've provided, having it all organized, and realizing that disclosure is an ongoing issue, I think are your best steps to making sure that you are fully prepared and ready. Anyways, Anna, why don't you talk to us about personal background details that you think would be helpful to share?
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. I'll say, it's great how you've touched on we're giving information showing that this disclosure will be needed, but it's not necessary that you come prepared with all of that just in your initial consultation, right? What you can share in your initial consultation is your personal background details, because that's what's going to be most helpful to share at this early stage. When people ask what they should bring to the initial consultation, I think immediately our minds go to paperwork first, and these documents are important. But before we even get there, context matters just as much. So, in your first meeting, one of the most helpful things you can share is your personal background in plain language. You don't need to tell your entire life story or need to justify your decisions. What your lawyer is really listening for is how the relationship unfolded, how it changed, and where things stand now, right? So, it usually starts with a simple timeline, how long you were together, whether you're married or common law, and when separation became a serious discussion. If there is a clear date of separation, that's important to mention too, even if it feels emotionally loaded. It is helpful to explain whether you're still living together, if you're newly separated, if you're already living apart. These details help us start to understand everything from finances to parenting arrangements, and if there's a sense of urgency that needs to be addressed more quickly. If you have children, sharing their ages, schooling, current routines, all is extremely helpful. And remember, we're not looking for criticism on you or the other parent. We're listening for stability, for patterns, and for what the children are experiencing day to day. As Michelle touched on, financial background is important and it matters, even if it's at a high level at this stage of your initial consultation. Who worked, who didn't, whether one person handled the finances, whether there's any immediate concerns like access to money or joint accounts. And finally, I think it's important to tell your lawyer what prompted you to seek advice now. Something usually changed to trigger you to go to that initial consultation. So, naming that moment helps us understand what your priorities are and whether there's any time-sensitive risks. The goal is not perfection or completeness in an initial consultation. The goal is clarity. So, when you share your background honestly and calmly, you give yourself and you give your lawyer the information needed to give you advice that fits your life, right? And like as Margie already pointed out as well, in an initial consultation, it is more general advice because we're still gathering that information. But I'd remind clients too that sometimes this can be more emotional than expected as well, as this could be your first time sharing a lot of these details out loud. So it's important to give yourself some grace in this process and take time before the consultation to write everything down because it may become overwhelming once the call actually starts. And you might want, or you might not remember everything that you want to mention. Having that list to go back to and ensuring that you're asking the questions that you had thought about beforehand can be helpful. And again, be kind to yourself. If you don't remember everything in the initial conversation and you decide to retain after, this is simply put in an email to your lawyer afterwards. So, Michelle and Margie, I don't know if you guys do something similar, but I know this is not talking about the initial consultation. But after my first follow-up or my first call with the clients after they've decided to retain, I'll send them a brief outline of the background information. Michelle, I'm sure with your homework, you absolutely do, right? Because I want those calls with clients and the initial consultation to be focused on being present and getting the information we need. I don't want the client to feel like they have to remember their to-do list, right? So I think that's something that I'll mention before my call to say, I'm going to send you a follow-up email after this, so you don't have to worry about remembering everything I said, including advice given, that will be written down afterwards, and that the purpose of the call is really to gather that information. So, in regard to preparing for that first call, I mentioned it could be helpful to write everything down beforehand. Margie, can you give some examples of what questions you can be asking during that initial consultation?
Um, so I usually tell people there is no such thing as a stupid question, right? Um, you, especially if you've never been through a separation, you don't know what to ask. So just ask whatever you feel like asking, even if you don't think it's relevant, even if you don't think that you're not really sure. I've had people ask me, like, I know there's a stupid question. There's no such thing as a stupid question. It's a safe space for you to be open with the lawyer who's doing a consultation. So ask anything you want to know about family law. Okay, and that includes any questions about your rights and obligations, questions about your options for how do I resolve these issues, um, questions about the process, what should I expect from this process, if I for example, if I choose to go down the collaborative process, what does that look like? um, if you have any specific questions that are specific to your situation, ask away. Okay, ask a lawyer about your expectations in terms of communications with them. Ask them about their expectations from you should you become their client. And it's because you want to ensure that you are paired with a lawyer you can work with, and that you are paired with a lawyer who sort of shares um, your what you want to do in terms of moving your matter forward. So, I mean, I don't really have any specific questions because every matter is different, but I'm just giving sort of general overview. If the only thing you remember about this portion of our webinar is there are no stupid questions. Okay, so ask away.
I think that's great, Margie. And that's just it, right? There are no stupid questions. And you want to go into that initial consultation knowing that the lawyer's there to help you and answer those questions. It's never going to be a situation where, someone's laughing at your question. If anything, I mean, I think a lot of clients too, you've asked these questions online already, and now this is your opportunity to ask the professional. So take advantage of it. And I know that, moving on to our next question, a big unknown and a question that is probably top of a lot of clients' mind is understanding their retainer agreement and the fee structure. So, what's this going to cost? And how do you pay the lawyer? One of the most stressful parts of the meeting a lawyer for the first time is talking about money, especially when you're already overwhelmed. So it's important to try to normalize that discomfort and demystify what the retainer actually is. Different firms have different fee structures. I would say that it's most widely practiced that a retainer is not a flat fee for your entire divorce. It's an advanced payment that sits in trust and is applied to the legal work that's done. So you should think of it as a starting balance, not a final bill. During your consultation, your lawyer can explain how they bill. Um, and if they don't, you can ask them, right? There's no stupid questions. Most family lawyers bill by the hour, and different team members have different hourly rates. So you should feel comfortable asking what those rates are and who will be working on your file. And ensure that any retainer agreement that you sign clearly states what those rates are. So you should be provided the information on how you will be billed, Will you be receiving monthly invoices? Will you be notified if the retainer is running low? The key thing here is that transparency is essential. So you're entitled to understand how your money's being used. Another important question to ask is scope. So, what does the retainer cover right now? Some retainers are broad and include negotiations and drafting, and others are limited to a specific task, like just a separation agreement or anything else within a limited scope. So, knowing the scope helps you avoid costs later or surprise costs later. So, it's also appropriate to ask about cost control strategies. Can certain tasks be handled by a law clerk? What are things you can do yourself to reduce fees? So this kind of circles back to what Michelle was talking about, right? The more organized you are, the less your lawyer or the law clerk has to spend time organizing those files or organizing those documents. And emails back and forth asking, where is this? You haven't sent this one yet. And a good lawyer will not rush this conversation or make you feel awkward for asking. Clear expectations protect both you and your lawyer, right? So understanding the retainer is not about mistrust. It's about entering the process informed and empowered so you can focus on resolving the family law issues without adding financial anxiety. So, Michelle, you've briefly touched on how you can organize these documents, and how this can help reduce fees. How can clients organize digital and physical documents?
That's a great question. And I love that you gave me all the organizational issues because this is my jam. This is what I love doing. So I work with clients who usually have a preference, physical versus digital. I will say that if you try to combine both, it becomes a little bit more difficult. It can be done, but it just requires a ton of organization. So, if possible, figure out what you prefer, digital or physical. And you may also want to talk to your lawyer because you may spend time saving, printing everything out, putting it in binders, tabbing it, just to find out that your lawyer's just going to take all of that, scan it in, and put it into their system anyway. So if your lawyer has a preference as to which one they want to do, oftentimes it is a cost saving measure to follow that same system. But any good lawyer will be able to work with whichever system you want, physical or digital. Obviously, I prefer digital, and I think our firm is very digitally based as well. So as I mentioned before, find a home base. So if you're going to physically get documents, like we talked about, getting statements in the mail, find one spot. I love those stupid Dollarama file folders where you open them up and they've got 12 different spots. Those things are perfect because as you find things, you can create little tabs. Like these are the things I've sent to my lawyer. These are the things I haven't sent to my lawyer yet. If it's digital, create a folder on your desktop or somewhere that's safe and secure. Security is always important to us. So if for instance you don't have a computer that is safe and secure, maybe it's a USB key that you have physically on you, but keep all your documents there and do the same system. Create folders, whether they're digital or physical folders, and create little tabs. So here are all the things that I've already sent to my lawyer. Here are all the things that I haven't sent to my lawyer yet. Use a really intuitive naming system, right? Clients who just, when you scan something and you get that 20 long, numeric code, your lawyer's not going to know what that is, right? So they're now going to open up your document, try to figure out what that is, and then rename it. That's money that you could be saving. You could do that yourself. You don't have to have a lawyer do that system. It's also really hard when you send a lawyer, a list of 18 things and they're not named and they're trying to figure out which thing goes where. I love numerical systems. So especially if, Anna, I agree with you. I always send my client the homework list. So if I send them the homework list and they reply to that homework list and say, here's numbers 1, 3, and 5, but 2 and 4 I'm still working on, how easy is that for the lawyer to say, okay, great. I know that 2 and 4 are coming. I can put all of these into my system and I know that 1, 3, and 5 are saved and done. And, they're good. It is also sometimes helpful, and again, this is on the advice of your lawyer, to organize it by date. And by date, I don't mean August, September, October, but date of marriage, date of separation. So when you have a financial statement, there are three kind of main categories: date of marriage, date of separation, and today. So let's say your lawyer asked you for your Capital One MasterCard statements at date of marriage and today, but they don't need it for the today value. Then you can put that. You can literally put the word today if you want. Your lawyer will know what that means. And you can use that same language that your lawyer uses and code things that way so everyone is on par, because your clerk, your lawyer, and yourself should all be kind of speaking the same language and saving things in the same way so that it's all organized and we all know what has and hasn't been done. Please keep originals of everything. We do our best, but technology happens. And I had a client just actually today who tried to upload probably about 10 or 15 items into one document, into one email. I never got it. I'm so sorry. It just never came through. I think it was just too big. I searched my files, my junk mails, but it was easy enough because the client had kept electronic copies and then she sent it into, smaller batches, which I was then able to get. So these things happen, having the backups, having the originals. I also like saving it by or having a little naming system or the date you sent it to the lawyer, because your lawyer may be getting 5 emails from you a day or 5 emails from you in the week. And you may think that that second email got through and it didn't. And how's your lawyer going to know what things they didn't get? You don't know what you don't know. Very importantly, don't alter documents. If you want to note something up, that's different. Have that conversation with your lawyer. But if you're really tech savvy and note some documents up, or let's say you have a physical document and you highlight and you write all over it, it's going to be hard for us to send that into the court. The court wants unredacted or unaltered documents. Maybe your lawyer and you will agree to put a second document where the first one's the original and the second one is the one with all your notes that you're going to, be able to have that conversation with your lawyer. So again, organization is key. It saves you time, saves you money. If you have questions, speak with your lawyer, speak with your law clerk, come up with a system collectively, because if we're all working within the same system, it's going to be the best scenario for you and everyone's going to be able to find things. All right, so Margie, what do you think, or what should clients expect from that very first meeting?
I couldn't find my microphone thing.
That's okay, that happens.
I just wanted to sort of highlight though, Michelle. For me, I know, I've actually been doing family for over 19 years, but I used to just do work with physical documents, but it's so much better when it's a digital, like I understand, like some people want the physical documents, but it's just so much better. Even with the courts, you upload everything online anyway. So that is a real cost saving um, uh, item as well. Save more money by just sending it digitally. Because I know you said physical documents, and I know some older clients like physical documents, but I think we're pretty much a paper-based, paperless, not paper-based, paperless office anyway. So in any event, should you expect from the first meeting at the initial consultation? So again, the initial consultation is information gathering. It's a planning session. It's not a meeting where you make final decisions. Okay. The purpose of the goal for the lawyer at the consultation is to understand your situation and in turn explain to you your rights and obligations, any potential risks, and outline any possible, your options for moving your matter forward, either through a negotiation through a separation agreement, through the traditional lawyer to lawyer, the collaborative process, mediation, or litigation. At the end of a consultation, you should have a better understanding of where you stand legally and what your next step should be. During the consultation, the lawyer should explain to you how the Ontario family law applies to your situation. Either, Divorce Act, the Family Law Act, the Children's Law Reform Act. The lawyer should cover key issues that might pertain to your particular situation. For example, parenting issues, decision-making responsibility, parenting time, child support, spousal support, equalization, or property division if you're married, or any sort of claims that you might make, or equitable claims you might make based on unjust enrichment if you're unmarried. The lawyer should also explain to you, as I mentioned, your rights, responsibilities, and potential risks, if any. And again, that would usually be a general discussion, because at the initial consultation, we don't necessarily, we most likely do not have all of the information we need to provide you with more detailed advice. The lawyer should go over, possible options and strategies. Like I mentioned, are you going to negotiate an agreement? Are you going to go through mediation or court? The pros and cons of each option based on your circumstances. The lawyer should discuss timelines, and as Anna mentioned, any sort of urgent issues that you should be dealing with, any practical considerations that you should be thinking about. The lawyer should be explaining to you, as Anna mentioned, the costs and the process, explaining legal fees, potentially, the billing structure, the retainers, what happens next if you decide to retain the firm, what you should expect in terms of receiving a retainer agreement, what that looks like, what services will be included, and what may or may not increase your costs. And as I mentioned before, how the lawyer typically works with their clients and how they communicate. Now, a consultation is not a place where you will be guaranteed outcomes. As lawyers, we never guarantee any outcomes, we never guarantee any outcomes, but especially during a consultation, because again, we don't have all the information that we need at that consultation. The lawyer will not usually provide specific predictions or finalize a strategy without all of the information, including financial disclosure, as Michelle had outlined, that kind of disclosure. And it's also not something that would be a substitute for ongoing legal advice. That is something that you would, when you go to initial consultation, it's usually because you need that sort of expert advice. And so once you retain, that is where you would receive the ongoing legal advice. Okay. When you lead the consultation, you should be leaving with a clear understanding of your position, knowledge of your immediate options and your next steps. And you should have some confidence as to whether this lawyer or this firm is a good fit for you. So I think then.
Thanks for that, Margie. I think, highlighting that one consultation is not going to fix all the issues, but it's going to provide some clarity on what the proper next steps are. And I think we've all kind of touched on the fact that, there's not all the problems are going to be solved in that initial consultation, but there are certain things that you should be flagging with your lawyer. And sometimes there's a specific change or a specific event that has you seeking legal advice. Michelle, are there any red flags or issues that should absolutely be mentioned in that initial consultation or early on?
That's such a great question, Anna. Thanks for asking it. So there are so many. And as you said before, it's all individual, right? So it's not that these things are going to crop up in every single matter, but if they do, please let us know, because it is important and it may steer the direction of your case. It may also help us to fit you with a lawyer who works best for your situation. So for instance, let's say at that first event, you're like, hey, Michelle, I haven't filed my taxes in 4 years. That's good to know. That's really good to know, because your initial consultation lawyer will say, excellent, I need you to get on that, right? Can't change the past, but at least if you need to move forward with this, here are the steps, get your taxes filed, here's what you need to do. Or, I don't think any initial consultation lawyer is going to say, it's okay, we don't need your taxes. It's going to have to happen. So it's better that you start that process now to give you the leeway, because it may take a month to be able to get all of your taxes filed. So the faster you know, the better. If you, or more importantly, the other party has unreported cash income, that's really good for us to know. It's nice to know where some of those red flag issues are going to be. And again, the initial consultation lawyer will usually put that into the notes. So the next lawyer is aware, hey, wait a second, we have some unreported or underreported income issues that we may need to deal with. Because again, those things take time and we may need to start doing it sooner rather than later. If you or the other party has had a recent change in your employment or has had a recent change in your health, those may also be important to know, right? Um, those may affect the next steps. It could affect things like parenting, it could affect support issues. So it's good to know because some of those things could trigger bigger problems later down the line if we don't know about it. If, for instance, there have been unusual and large financial transactions that you were not aware of, I'd really love for you to tell your initial consultation lawyer about it because sometimes we may need to bring an urgent motion if someone's moving cash or hiding income or doing something, where we're concerned that a large amount of money is being moved. The most, I think, the thing we see the most is people removing like large amounts of money from lines of credit, where someone goes in and scoops out $50,000. That's a big problem, and that needs to be fixed sooner rather than later, because as you can imagine, the interest on those things are really high. And what happens if someone moves that, to a different account or even, God forbid, a different country, it becomes really problematic really fast. So letting your initial consultation lawyer know that these are issues will flag them to the lawyer you eventually retain so that we're not wasting time on small issues. We're getting to the meat of the problem really fast and getting those things done. As Margie said, obviously, if there's a existing court order or an agreement, something that's signed, we need to know that because our advice will change if we know that there's an existing agreement that you need to abide by. Coming in, most people don't have an existing agreement or an existing order. So it's really important that you have that and let your initial consultation lawyer know about it so that your retained lawyer can also know about it and get copies of that and be up to date with what that says. Um, and as Margie said, anything that you're embarrassed or hesitant to share, you should probably share it with us. We've heard it all. We're not going to judge you. We don't care. We would much rather, when people have something really difficult that they just need to get off their chest, and you'll ask the question, we'll say, oh, don't worry about that. Like, I'm not too worried. Maybe you're really worried about that bank account that you have with your mom that has $100,000 sitting in it that you think, oh my God, that's my mom's money. I would much rather put you at ease early in the process. I don't want you carrying around that weight till our third or fourth meeting. I want you to be able to take that off your list and say, okay, we will deal with it. We will get the disclosure. We will confirm that this is not your asset. But the number one thing, and I say to all my clients, is family violence. If there has been family violence, please tell me about it. I know it's emotional. I know it is difficult to deal with, and I can't imagine how, hard that is to talk to a relative stranger about. But I need to know. I need to know because I want to protect you. I want to protect your kids. I want to give you those safety planning advice that client number one and client number two, if there is a family violence issue, I'm going to give them very different sets of instructions, right? So that is one of the most important things. Your family lawyer is here. We are a team that is here to help you. So whether you feel ashamed or scared or you're just anxious about it, please, please, please let us know about it. We will do everything in our power to, if we can't give you the answer, at least give you the next steps in what we think you should do next. And that actually really nicely leads us into our next topic, Anna. What are some tips and tricks you have to reduce stress and to feel prepared for that first meeting?
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that if you're feeling anxious before your initial consultation, that's completely normal. You're stepping into unfamiliar territory at a very vulnerable time. And the goal at this stage is not to eliminate stress entirely, but to reduce it enough that you can think clearly and ask the questions that matter. And I think that kind of, you know, ties in nicely with what you just said, Michelle, about you rather say to the client, like, oh, it's something I'm not worried about, because it could seem like a bigger issue to them, right? So allow your lawyer to kind of make that judgment call and let them know if, or let you know if it's something you should be worried about, or if it's actually something that maybe is snowballed into a bigger issue and it's not something that you should be overly concerned about, right? I want to make sure that our clients feel less stressed after that call, and we now have a game plan or a clear next step that we can focus on. So, first, I think remind yourself that this meeting is informational. You're not committing to anything simply by showing up. You're gathering knowledge, and then that knowledge allows you to have options and decide what your next move is going to be. So, before the meeting, write everything down. Write down your top concerns, not every concern, but the ones that you are keeping you up at night and that you really want to have the opportunity to speak with your lawyer about, or at that point, the consultation lawyer. So this helps anchor that conversation if emotions start to take over. I think it also helps to accept that you're not going to leave with every answer, right? We want to manage expectations and say family law issues can unfold over time. A good consultation gives you direction. It's not going to be a full roadmap within 1 hour. During the meeting, you can take your notes beforehand and refer to those notes so you don't have to remember everything in real time. I think that's really big when it comes to reducing stress and feeling prepared, ensuring that, you've taken the proper time before that initial call to kind of, take a second to breathe, decide what you want to ask the lawyer. So if it becomes overwhelming, you can refer to those notes. And try to speak honestly. Even if you feel embarrassed or unsure, your lawyer's not there to judge your choices. Um, Truly, they're probably so busy that they're gonna move on to the next thing right after the call, right? So we're there to assess risk, explain options, and help you move forward in a way that, and we can't do that in a proper way unless we're getting truthful information. After that consultation, give yourself some space. You don't need to spiral or make a decision right away. Sit with the information that you were given, review the notes, and decide what next step feels right and helps you feel grounded. Feeling prepared doesn't mean feeling fearless. It means knowing that you took a thoughtful and informed first step. And that on its own, I think, is something to be really proud of, right? You're going through a huge life transition, and taking that initial consultation is the first step. So I think on that note, that concludes our discussion today. I'll thank you all, our viewers, for tuning into Family Law Now After Hours, and thank you to my panelists for this wonderful conversation. After this session, a brief survey will appear, allowing you to share your comments and suggestions for future topics you'd like us to explore. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. Book now and take advantage of the opportunity for a complimentary consultation with one of our lawyers. Please contact our intake team at intake@russellalexander.com and mention our After Hours series to schedule an appointment. Registration is now open for our next event, the True Cost of Divorce in Ontario, Fees, Risks, and Hidden Expenses. Just go to russellalexander.com/familylawnow. Thanks again to our panelists and for sharing your insight today. And thank you all for tuning in to After Hours.
Thank you, Anna and Margie. It was lovely spending this last hour.